Okay, the National Security Council Coordinator for Strategic Communications at the White House, John Kirby, is talking about the downing of, well, 3 more unidentified flying objects. Here's the latest. Let's listen in.
Obviously, certainly with respect to the spy balloon, we want to make sure that we are gleaning what we can from this imagery so that we can answer your questions better. And so to what degree there is or will or will not be public release, I do want to stress that, we're going to want to make sure that we have had a chance to analyze that imagery for ourselves as much as possible.
Following up on Phil's question, I guess what we're trying to discern is, you said earlier, we're looking for these more, so we're finding more. And
I said that could be one reason why we're finding more.
One reason, but what we're getting at is, why are we all of a sudden shooting them down? And to add to that, the NORAD commander, for instance, said that when the first spy balloon was crossing over American and then Canadian airspace, one of the reasons that he couldn't take action was because his assessment was that it didn't pose a military threat or have hostile intent, and so he couldn't take action there. It seems like maybe that protocol has changed, or his ability to make that call where there is not an imminent threat militarily or physically might have changed. So can you explain to us what changed? Why are we shooting them down all of a sudden?
I kind of feel like I took care of that in my opening statement, but I'm happy to revisit it. I mean, really 2 reasons here. And these are certainly in both cases, they're different. I mean, I think we need to separate the Chinese spy balloon. We knew what it was. We knew where it was going. We knew what it was trying to do. And by not taking it down, I mean, that was also a huge payload. Like I said, the size of 3 school buses. So really the option of shooting that down over land wasn't a legitimate option, because somebody really could have gotten hurt. And we used the time available to us, knowing what this thing was all about. We used that time to study it, to learn from it, to collect on it. Then taking it down at the earliest opportunity in the water. And we have retrieved some of that debris off the bottom, and we're studying that. Hang on a second, I'll be right there. So let's separate that from these other 3. These other 3, what are some of the differences? Altitude's a big difference.
Is that a threshold now? A risk to civilian aircraft?
Let me get through this, and then altitude's different. The Chinese spy balloon was at 60,000 plus, well outside commercial air traffic concerns. These 3 were right on the border of it, so there was a legitimate concern there. Chinese spy balloon, we knew exactly what that thing was, and we knew what it was trying to do. And we saw it, Jackie, as it slowed down, sped up, maneuvered a little bit, trying to get a look at what we believe to be sensitive military sites. These other 3, they didn't have propulsion, they weren't being maneuvered, it was basically they were being driven by the wind. We don't know for sure whether they had a surveillance aspect to them, but we can't rule it out. So there was enough uncertainty there that, again, out of an abundance of caution, doing the prudent thing, the president directed that they get taken down. And I get where you're going. Is this the standard going forward? And we're gonna dive into this. We're gonna learn from these 3 events. We're gonna continue to study what happened. We're gonna have an interagency effort that helps us get around the policy implications here, and we'll see where this goes. But bottom line for President Biden is, you got to do the right thing for the American people, for our safety and security.
Is it strange that no one's claimed these yet as theirs?
I can't say whether that's strange or not, since we're sort of in uncharted territory here, no pun intended. But we don't know. And I suspect that. Go ahead. I'm basically done.
Okay.
I'm basically done.
Sir, what's your name, sir?
Bo from CBS.
Okay.
Has the payload been recovered from South Carolina yet?
The
large so-called payload that's...
Yeah, as I said, some of the debris, certainly they were able to take things off the surface like the next day, actually that afternoon, some of the balloon fabric. And in the days since, they have been able to recover some, not all, of the payload that sank to the bottom of the Atlantic. It's in about 45 feet of water. Weather conditions are pretty tough off the coast right now. Like today, for instance, they have not been able to get into the water and dive on it. But over the course of the weekend, they were able to raise some of the debris, including some of the electronics and in some of the structure.
Do you have an expectation of when all that payload is going to be collected?
I don't. I wish if I could tell you that, I'd be a very wealthy man. I mean, it could take a long time, given the sea state and weather conditions and the degree to which we have to protect the safety of the divers.
And one last question. You said you were unsure of the surveillance capabilities of these latest objects. Last week we were told several times that every precaution was taken to ensure that the sensitive installations were covered. We don't know exactly what you all did, but has there been a
Nor are you going to find out.
Well, has there been a posture change nationwide regarding all of these sensitive sites?
If you're
proactively,
let me just put a fork in this. If the implication is that there's some sort of blanket now security policy for every base on the continental United States, the answer is no. We do have protocols, particularly when we know that surveillance is going to occur, like in the Open Skies Treaty with Russia, for instance, when all that's scheduled and laid out, and when you know that there's going to be an open skies flight by Russia, you take the appropriate actions. And that's what we did in the case of the Chinese spy balloon, and we'll always do that. I will never talk about what precautions we're going to make at any given base at any given time, but we always do what we need to do to protect our nation's secrets. I won't talk about it any more than that.
Okay, we have to move on. Way in the back.
Oh, thank
Way in the
you.
back.
Me? Thank you very much.
No. The gentleman right there.
Okay.
Admiral, you started the briefing by talking about the president's involvement in this. The report from ODNI recently that goes over this. In that ODNI report about unidentified aerial phenomena, it says there were 247 unidentified aerial phenomenon reports since March of 2021, some of which have, quote, demonstrated unusual flight characteristics or performance capabilities. So can you say why the president just recently, within the last couple of weeks, started ordering some of these objects to be shot down, and why there weren't any orders throughout 2021 or throughout 2022?
It's very simple. It comes down to what sort of safety and security threats and risks we're talking about, and also it comes down to a lot to our ability to track, detect, and engage. Having come from the Pentagon, I can tell you that some of these UAPs, while we may not be able to know what each and every one is doing, some of the big concern there was that many of those reports were happening around our training ranges, were happening around air training ranges. So combat pilots were seeing these things, and there was a potential impact to the safety of flight of our pilots. But you may not have but a fleeting moment on some of these things to see it, and so it's different in these cases. We had time to detect, time to analyze, time to engage, time to make those kinds of decisions. But it all comes down to safety and security, first and foremost.
So is the time, though, is a matter of capability? You have better capabilities now than we did.
Okay, John Kirby speaking with reporters about what has taken place in the last week or so. On February 4th, the U.S. shot down a Chinese spy balloon. There have been 3 others shot down since then.